Before we get started, I want to shout out the presenting sponsor of this show, Roastar Coffee Packaging Company, found online at roastar.com. I just spent some quality time with the Roastar team at the Specialty Coffee Expo in Chicago, where they showed their support for coffee roasters of all sizes by sponsoring the SCA Packaging Design Award, which featured both the coffee and the packaging artwork. Learn more about how Roastar can support your coffee packaging needs by going to roastar.com. Now on to the show. Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Season 10, Episode 6 of the Coffee People podcast, which is part of the Roast West Coast Coffee Network and presented by Roastar Coffee Packaging. I'm Ryan Woldt, and this is the coffee show where we meet compelling humans from all corners of the coffee industry. They share their coffee stories, and we try to figure out together why they are so motivated to do what they do in coffee. This episode is coming to you a few days late because, well, frankly, the Specialty Coffee Expo in Chicago and my travel to and from it took a little bit out of me. I promise it will have been worth the wait, because today we're chatting with Ricardo Lopez, the founder and CEO of Bellwether Coffee. Based in Berkley, California, Bellwether is the producer of electric, ventless, and automatic coffee roasters, and their multi-pronged effort at uplifting coffee, in particular, sustainable coffee, includes their green coffee marketplace and roast management software. Things we talk about today include seeing our parents model behavior that inspires their children, where Bellwether fits into the coffee industry, and the reality that spurring innovation and creating new technology requires a little grit. I'm excited to share this show, and I get the feeling that Ricardo doesn't always let the focus fall on his coffee story. While you're listening today, check out coffeepeoplepodcast.com. There you'll see the newsletter that accompanies this episode of the podcast. You'll also find links to both bellwethercoffee.com and both there and our social medias. You can also find those in this podcast's show notes, wherever you find yourself listening. So let's get to it. I've got coffee, so much coffee, from SCA, including this Ethiopia West RC Nasibo, washed edition, that I brewed on a clever dripper. I've got it in one of my favorite coffee mugs, and I'm feeling calm, probably for the first time since I pulled the car onto Lakeshore Drive at rush hour in Chicago last weekend. And I hope wherever you are, your mug is filled with coffee and you're feeling as settled as I am, because it's time for another Coffee People conversation, this one with Ricardo Lopez, CEO and co-founder of Bellwether Coffee. And I'm excited that you're here. I have a lot of questions about the Bellwether, but if we could, to get us started, let everyone know who you are, what your title is, and the name of your company.
Yeah, so my name is Ricardo Lopez, founder, CEO of Bellwether Coffee. I usually don't really talk about myself very often. I really try to just talk about the company and the amazing team here and what we're up to. But just quickly, I was born in California to immigrant parents from Mexico. They migrated when they were pretty young, in their teens, and ended up becoming public school teachers in the little farming community that we lived in, and they almost became like a bridge between the different worlds, because the community that we lived in was there was a big migrant population there, and then the farming community, and they became a bridge because they spoke the different languages and they understood the different cultures. And I didn't know it at the time, but they were actually modeling a behavior for me in trying to operate within different worlds and communicating with people in different worlds. And in my adulthood, I realized, like, oh, wow, that's like really important to like bring people together around a common cause. And in their case, it was like, this small farm town and bringing people together, to have a successful, thriving community. So that really drives me as who I am, as a person. So that's enough about me.
this whole show is about you. That's the whole
Oh, great.
point, is we're
Okay.
learning what drove you to get to where you are and create what you did. We can start a little bit more on the coffee side of things, just with as you're growing up, as you're moving forward through life. I know Bellwether isn't the first thing that you did, but did you have a first experience with coffee that made you think, this is interesting? I mentioned off air that for me, it was a
Yeah.
family member who said, you got to learn this. What about you?
Just throughout most of my early life, coffee was, it was a vehicle for caffeine, right? And it wasn't until I went into the wine industry and I developed a lot of great relationships in the wine industry, friendships, and really got to see how wine is such an expression of art form. And when you hang out with a bunch of winemakers and you get to see their passion for it and the nuance of it, it just opened my mind. And then I connected with somebody by the name of Matt Brown, who is a friend and co-founder of Bellwether, and he had wine experience too. And then we started talking about the coffee industry and how there was this, how coffee is on the same trajectory as the wine industry. And we were like, oh wow. So in this world of wine, we saw folks that would just order red or white, and then as the industry evolved and the mainstream like palates evolved, people wouldn't just want a white; they would want a Chardonnay, a Pinot Grigio, a Chenin Blanc, and we're like, oh my gosh, that is possible in coffee. And then that's when I really started to understand coffee and the potential that it had, and all the nuance and the just the wonderful experiences that could be created from it. And that really was like the aha moment for us, where we realized that, like, hey, what's keeping retailers, what's keeping cafes from creating like these really unique differentiated experiences that are representative of their expression. And then as you dig into it, you start to realize that in order to really have access to those quality drivers, you really need to have visibility over the sourcing of that coffee and over the roasting of that coffee, because it's so influential to how you grind and brew that coffee and create that experience for your consumer. That kind of set us off on this journey where we're like, okay, how do we help cafes? How do we help retailers get access to that? And at the time, this was 10 years ago, where it was very difficult for people to become green buyers, become roasters, right? Because of the barriers to entry. At that time, most cafes wouldn't consider even roasting their own coffee because it was like a completely different business, right? So that set us off on this journey where we wanted to be able to enable the cafes to create these experiences. And the other factor, as we started digging into it, we realized that there's these significant challenges that are inherent in the coffee world of coffee, that they're just leading the industry down this path where it becomes no longer sustainable. And as we dug in, we looked at the roasting side of it, and how when roasting coffee, it's so dependent on natural gas, where you start to look at the carbon footprint of coffee. Again, this coffee is something, it's ubiquitous in so many people's lives, right? It's like you start to realize just how big it is and how tens of billions of pounds of carbon are emitted just from roasting coffee every year. So, and there was no other viable solution that could scale using an alternative energy source like electricity. We looked at that as a significant issue within the industry. And then as we dug in further, and you start to see that the majority of the farming population that grow this wonderful crop that we all enjoy are not even making a living wage. Mm-hmm. And then you see generations of farmers that, like the latest generation, they're like, hey, I've seen my parents and my grandparents struggle with this livelihood, so I'm going to find an alternate livelihood. And then with you couple that with climate change, the impact of climate change, it's no longer a sustainable industry. So when you look at these significant challenges, it got me excited, because I felt that these things could be solved. We believe that these things could be solved. And that's really what set us off on developing the Bellwether roasting platform as it is today.
When you were having these discussions with Matt, and you're taking in all of this data, all this information about the industry, about which, as you were talking about it, I could see this bubble getting bigger and bigger and bigger of
Yeah.
information. Were you in a position where you were motivated because you wanted to start a business generally as an entrepreneur? You were trying to leave something to do something new, or was the vision of Bellwether uh, was did the business come about because you thought here's a problem that I want to solve as opposed to here's a business I want to start for me?
Before coffee and before wine, I spent some time in tech, doing things that are make your eyes gloss over. When I tell people, it's like, building out data center infrastructure management, it's like puts people to sleep when I talk about it. But I left that, and I was part of the Web 1.0, and I left that because it didn't have purpose or meaning to it for me. And at the time, when just before Bellwether came about, my wife and I had a baby girl, and I started thinking about, well, where can I find meaning for me, and how could my wife and I best guide our daughter to find her way in contributing to hopefully a better tomorrow, right? And I thought about my parents, and they told me to do this and do that, but at the end of the day, it was what I saw them do every day. It was that modeling behavior that really impacted me. So I talked to my wife, and we realized that, like, hey, it's, we could tell our daughter to do all these things, but at the end of the day, she's going to watch what we do every day. So that really, crystallized that whatever I put my energy into, it has to help make a better tomorrow. And then that's where this kismet moment, if you will, happened, where, this opportunity with Bellwether came about, where here you have something to make meaningful change. It has the potential to make meaningful change, and really do it in a way that I think is scalable from a triple bottom line point of view, right? So I believe that if you're going to have any sort of systematic change for good, it needs to be profit driven. It needs to also benefit the planet and people, right? So I think if you're going to have a long standing systematic change, it needs to have that. It needs to make good business sense, right?
Sure. Because otherwise, what's the motivation to keep doing it? I mean, it's too easy to hit a roadblock where you're just like, well, we can't afford to keep going down this path. Did you have any sort of role models for that sort of business entity? I mean, in my brain, I'm thinking of Yvonne Chouinard or people like that they're making money, no question about it, but they're also trying to push industries forward in a good way.
I did. I had some mentors of mine that really helped, but ultimately, I would say that the folks that really pushed me the most, or were the most influential, were my parents, honestly, and what they were able to do with their lives. And there's just like real sense of like trying to take all the hard work that they've done and level up from there. You just want to continue to level up and just do good. So
I never would have used the word modeling because I'm not that far advanced in my intellect yet. But my parents were both entrepreneurs, and now myself and I have two brothers. We all own our own businesses,
that's
and
awesome.
I don't think that's a coincidence by any means.
Totally.
I'm hoping you can give our audience a quick primer about what the Bellwether is, what it was, the idea when you kind of launched this machine, and where is it has it come is kind of where we're going to go with this. But how was it different when you launched, and what was the concept that you put out into the market in the first place?
Yeah. So Bellwether, our mission is to really enable retailers to create incredible coffee experiences in the most sustainable way. And we developed a roasting platform that enables cafes to roast in store with electric ventless roasters, and also source coffees through our green coffee marketplace. And our marketplace is unique in the way that it ensures farmers are paid a living wage through an industry first standard that we created called living income pricing coffees. So it's a platform. So we're not just a roaster. We're not just a green coffee marketplace. We're a platform that combines those two. Now, our customers don't have to buy our coffee, but it's not like a closed system like that. But we realized that in order for retailers, in order for cafes to create that unique differentiated experience, there's really those two needs that a lot of them have, which is both on the roasting side and on the green coffee buying side.
How did you approach excellence, which is always the goal, in two different, pretty drastically different area? One is manufacturing of a machine and a new technology, and one is building green coffee relationships around the world.
Yeah. So the first hires for Bellwether, the first new team members that we brought on were coffee experts that had been stalwarts in the industry for decades, and it was really their guidance. They're creating this North Star that they just it's unwavering for them in terms of what quality is. And then that really, like Gabe Boscana is one of them, and he's team member number one. He would never sacrifice quality, and he really helped inform what the roaster specifications needed to be. Because at the end of the day, if we cannot create a tool that creates incredible quality, then you're not going to get adoption, right?
Sure.
So, and at the end of the day, like I do look at the roaster as a tool set, right? We're a tool that enables retailers to create the experience that they want to create. And there's so many different ways to enjoy coffee, right? There's so many ways, and we wanted to create a tool that can cover almost all of them, right? So that's what we set out to do.
When I first started hearing about the Bellwether roasting machines, I think the thing that stood out to me was this idea that it was a all-in-one machine and technology, and that it was relatively simple to learn. And simple is not meant to be an insult or a condescending comment. It's a here's an opportunity for people to go from zero to operating and grow with that machine quickly, as opposed to starting from scratch because it was all part of one thing. I think the first one I saw looked kind of like a Tesla vending machine, maybe. I'm not sure how to explain it. Uh, I didn't really understand what I was looking at. It doesn't look like a traditional roasting machine. And so, how is your roasting machine different from, say, what a lot of coffee people are familiar with, in the world, like the San
Yeah,
Franciscans and the big machines that are mechanical and manufactured?
yeah. So coffee roasters, they typically are conduction based or convection based or a combination of the two. So an example of a convection based roaster would be like a Civets air roaster, and then you have like maybe a Probot, on the conduction side. But a lot of roasters today, they use a combination of conduction and convection. And the Bellwether is no different in that way. As a matter of fact, you can actually control those to mimic more conduction style roasting or more convection style roasting. So again, this is kind of like, it's a tool set, right? It's a tool
Mhm.
to help folks create what it is that they want. Now, what makes ours different is that it's fully electric. It doesn't require any type of gas lines or water plumbing. You just simply plug it in, and that's it, and you're good to go. And our latest roaster, it requires just a simple 220 30 amp circuit. So very similar to espresso machines. So it's really easy to install. So the idea of needing gas lines and all that infrastructure and the ventilation and the afterburner, all those things that are typically associated with traditional roasters, those are no longer barriers for that retailer, for that cafe, right? So they can get up and started from a installation and a roasting point of view very quickly. Now, what we're really excited about with regards to our roaster is that you have this closed loop technology, which basically means that once you get the drum temperature to the right temperature that you want, then we have air that we heat up and it roasts the coffee. Then it gets cleaned, and then it goes back it gets heated back up to temperature, and then it gets recirculated. So it's a closed loop environment. And one of the challenges with traditional roasting is that here in the Bay Area, one day, it could be 70 degrees and dry and a beautiful day. And the next day you can have, the fog come in and you can have super high humidity and it could be, 50 degrees. And traditional roasters, you have to change how you roast because the air that you're bringing in to heat up is at a different temperature. It has a different moisture content. With the Bellwether roaster, because it's a closed loop, it's a consistent environment. And that way, if you are roasting, if you have a Bellwether in California and then you have another one in Tokyo, you're able to achieve the exact same results because of the closed loop environment. The other benefit to that is it's the most electrically efficient roaster on the market because when you have a closed loop system and you heat air to, let's say, 500 degrees Fahrenheit, it roasts the coffee, it loses some of its energy and it goes up to, it drops down to, let's say, 300 degrees. Then you're taking that air and heating it back up to 500 degrees. Versus when you have an open loop system, you're taking ambient air that's like 60 degrees, taking it up to 500 degrees and constantly doing that. So it requires a lot more energy than our system.
I'm thinking of, say, a propane or a gas powered roaster and having to fire that up. It's like like a car. When you start it up, you're burning just as much gas as you are driving down the road.
Totally. Yeah.
You said something earlier about the speed of which you can get set up and operating, but simply plugging it in. To me, as a restaurant person, it sounds like I'm also not dealing with permits for here in California in particular. We are pretty,
Yeah.
dispersal of things into the air is a pretty serious business. And so there's a lot more that goes into setting up a coffee roaster than maybe in another state. And this sounds like that this kind of eliminates the need for that. Am I mistaken in that?
Totally. Yeah. So even like when you have the roasters that use natural gas or even electricity and they're open loop, they have to have afterburners on them, right? And those afterburners, they consume natural gas or propane, and often they consume 80% of the fuel necessary to roast the coffee. So they're huge energy consumers. With our system, because it's closed loop, you don't have to worry about any of that. And we took our time to get a lot of regulatory certifications for our roaster, everything from, in the industry, they're called UL, but there's national NSF standards, so food safety standards. So basically, when you go into a cafe and you look at a espresso machine, it has these food safety standards that are common in a commercial setting. And we ensured that our roaster had all those same listings, complied with all those same standards. So it could be accepted easily.
The roasters that I've seen of yours in person, I wouldn't say that they were extremely overwhelming as far as their space take up, in a cafe of any given size. But you have a new roaster, which is one of the reasons we're talking today, which is notably smaller.
Yeah.
One, why make a smaller coffee roaster, a countertop roaster? How is it different from the larger version that was previously out there? What's the advantage or disadvantage, or why go this route?
We're really excited about this roaster.
I have seen a literal million articles about it. You've got a great PR team getting the news out. I think everyone knows that it's out. So we're
Awesome.
one more stop on that path. So I'm excited to hear from you. What motivated this change? Because it's the photos that I've seen of it. Because I have not seen it in real life, but it's pretty. I mean, it literally could be on the back counter of any diner or cafe. I mean, as far as size wise.
Yeah. So what we've learned is some of the barriers for coffee shops, for retailers, is space. So a countertop option was important. The other part is, there's two significant things with our latest roaster. One of them is the price point. It starts at 14,900, and that's incredibly important for folks because our prior roaster, it was expensive. It's at $60,000. So it was a barrier for folks wanting to create their own experience through sourcing and buying and roasting their own coffee. So the price point is a big enabler for folks to start being able to take advantage of creating their own brand, their own experience with coffee, as well as going from buying wholesale coffee at $10, $12 a pound to now buying green coffee at half that, if not less. The other part is coffee shops, they want the ability, or retailers, they want the ability to grow with their roaster. And this roaster, it makes sense it makes financial sense if your volume is like 20 pounds a week, all the way up to 400 pounds a week. We have an upgrade called continuous roasting mode for an additional $5,000 that enables a customer to roast 44 pounds at a time. So they effectively load the roaster and they pick the profile for that coffee. They hit go, and it will just continuously roast batch after batch and without any additional intervention. Now, of course, the cafe owner, the team, they have to create their coffee menu, right? They have to create the profiles or leverage our team to help with that. So you still have all that front end work that needs to go into creating that experience. But once that's established, the labor associated with a Bellwether is very little. Like to load that 44-pound batch takes 5 minutes or less.
Where does that coffee go once it's been roasted? Because I mean, do you still need somebody monitoring it as it's roasting? You mentioned labor, and that's why I asked this.
Yeah, you can have it in the cafe roasting while you're serving customers. So it has a loader on top where it can hold the 44 pounds, and then it has an unloader on the bottom where that coffee gets stored. And then it's essentially a bin, if you will, that you can just remove, and you can have the coffee stored there until you use it, and you can just add another bin.
Hey there, I'm popping in to interject that since recording this interview, I have actually seen the roaster in person. The photos don't really do it justice in terms of its functional scale and classic design. Seeing it operate on the back counter of the Bellwether booth on the SCA convention floor made it very clear how this could fit within the space constraints of all but the tiniest of cafe countertops. Okay, back to it. What about the design of this new system? One, aesthetically, they are going to be front and center in a cafe space, customer facing. So I would imagine that you have some challenges with both, one, you want it to look good, but also the noise of a traditional roaster. There's a lot, well, I would say the smell, which is an appeal, but you never really know how that's going to go when you're using equipment. How did you address kind of the aesthetics and the design of a smaller countertop version versus the larger one, which was still forward facing in a lot of cases, but maybe less so?
So I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, but
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. So a friend of mine in Southern California, he had this bakery that was, it was a bakery that he visited a lot, and they baked everything there, and he loved it. He had that fresh smell of baked goods, and he became friendly with the owner. And the owner opened up another shop, and like a few miles away, and he shipped all the baked goods to the other place, and realized that it was not doing nearly as well. And then the owner had this idea to move some of the baking equipment, some of the ovens, over to the other spot, and they started baking fresh goods there in a way that consumers could see it, they can experience it, they can smell it, and then his sales like shot up, because he realized that, and this is a great learning for me and something that I've been able to witness with our customers, that when consumers can come in and they can see the roasting happening, it creates a level of transparency into the process of making that cup of coffee. That's why we spend a great deal of time creating the front of the drum out of glass, right? So it's all part of like being able to expose your consumers or our customers into the whole roasting process, because before it was like rather opaque, right, in terms of the whole supply chain of coffee and the roasting process. So I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I think that it draws a customer into the process. They're part of it now. They're seeing it and experiencing it. It's like taking a farm tour, a brewery tour, right? You're part of it.
Totally.
It gives
Yeah.
you a story to tell. The sustainability is something we've kind of been touching on as we go, and it's an oft-used term. it sounds like from the beginning that was an important component to what you're doing, both for the business but also for yourself. One, why give a shit? Excuse my language, everyone. Why does that matter, and how is it a benefit to the business, and how is Bellwether following through on that effort? Especially if you're paving, you're essentially taking an established industry and paving a new lane in it, right?
Why does it matter? Let's see. There's businesses out there that they start and the impact side of things is kind of a bolt on to the business, or maybe it's a type of business that doesn't really have the opportunity to have any type of positive impact. Like Bellwether from the ground up is about impact, and we're taking an approach where it makes really good business sense to do so. So I, like we give a shit because it's in our ethos. It's what we're all about here, and we feel really good about helping retailers, helping cafes make more money by roasting their own coffee, creating an incredible experience, and doing it in the most sustainable way, both from the environmental point of view and at the farm level. So it's like this wonderful trifecta that we're really, really proud about. And we're really excited to spread the word to show, hey, there is other ways to do this, right? You've been in the industry for a long time, and like you're no stranger to hearing about what happens at the farm level, right? And there's not a lot of change that's been happening over the last decades, right? So we're hopeful that as roasting coffee in store becomes the rule, not the exception, we're effectively creating more buyers of green coffee. And if we can create more buyers of green coffee, then we're going to have a better equilibrium between supply and demand. Because right now you have like 16 million farmers around the world growing coffee, most in developing countries. And then you have a small percentage of actual buyers of coffee. Like one entity is responsible for buying 12% of the world's coffee. So who has change? Who can make change in that predicament, right? In that scenario, we really do believe that by enabling cafes, enabling retailers to buy green coffee, to roast their own coffee, and doing it in the most sustainable way, ensuring that farmers are getting paid a living income, is really going to have a meaningful change in this industry. And I'm really excited about that. Our team's really excited about that.
Early in our chat, you mentioned obviously that you grew up in a farming community, but also that we're seeing young people who grow up in those communities going, man, this is a hard life, not just here in America, but around the world.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to do something different. How does this effort possibly shift that? I mean, yes, we have more buyers for green coffee, but how are we providing a more power back to a farmer, or more of an appeal for a young person to say, this is something that I want to follow in the footsteps of my parents, their parents, as opposed to I have to follow them because I don't have other options.
Right. Right. Well, I think first is we need to create a system, a supply chain that ensures that they're valued and there's a true partnership where they're getting paid a living income. I mean, it's basic fundamental stuff that it
That's
just
the
needs to
stuff we
be
always screw up though, because we overthink it.
totally. Yeah. 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 So that, I mean, like Grayson, who heads our impact, she's like, hey, if you want to make change, buy coffee that's living income certified. It's like that simple, right? But it's hard to do that when you just take the buying of green coffee into consideration, when you have to take the entire like business into consideration, right? So that's where the platform of Bellwether is so important. So we're just not a marketplace, right? We're enabling people who used to buy coffee for $10 to $12 now able to cut that cost effectively in half. The farmers are getting paid a living wage as a result still, but they're able to save money. So again, like it needs to make good business sense. And as long as you have a system that makes good business sense for all parties involved, then it can scale.
Sure, it's a win-win-win as
Yeah,
opposed to just
exactly.
one winner.
Yeah.
You've been doing this now for 10 years, I think you said.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one, how has this effort changed? What have you kind of learned? What sort of wisdom have you gleaned along the way as you've been pushing forward down this path?
You know, grit is like the big you know thing that comes to mind. Making systematic changes in an established world is very difficult to do, and I'm really grateful to have a be part of a team that has a lot of grit and resilience, because it is hard to change things up, but it's necessary, right? And I think part of our mission and the impact potential that it has really fuels the team to push through the hard moments. Like, building technology like this is not easy. Trying to get our manufacturing costs lower so we can have a roaster at the price point that we do now, it's just incredibly difficult. So, like, I mean, our new roaster is, it's a quarter of the price of our previous one. So it can't roast as much as our current one on a weekly basis, but it's still, like, it's a magnitude better. I think grit really comes into mind when you ask that question.
When you first started, especially, but even now, have you faced blowback from traditionalists, from people who say this isn't the kind of system that we've had before? This isn't the kind of roasting machine we've used before. It's not going to work. It's not what we want.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. When we first started, 10 years ago, like, roasting with electricity was not a thing. It was not accepted at all. Now, I'm excited to see other entrants like, Probot and Gießen and others. Now they're now creating electric roasters, which is great. I feel equipped to compete with other electric roasters. And I think a rising tide lifts all ships, right? So I'm excited for that. So, but it took a lot of time to have that happen. And, like, I think a good analogy, you brought up Tesla before, but like electric vehicles, right? They had, it wasn't until, they were proven that they could you could have a high performance vehicle that was electric, right? And then you start to see how there's this entrance on the high end of the market, right? And then you start to see EVs become more and more affordable. So it's almost like a similar path in a way for us.
I think there's actually a headline in the Post today at the top of the page about the cost of EVs dropping by so many thousands of dollars over the last 12 months because of the number of entrants into the market and the actual competition.
Yeah.
So a great analogy. You mentioned earlier that you were with Bellwether, or whatever it is you were going into, you were looking to do something that fulfilled a mission need, an ethos of sorts. And I read somewhere that you were looking to do something that your family and your daughter could be proud of, who you mentioned. Do you think you've succeeded, or do you think you're on that path to that with what you're doing now? Are you feeling like, you've mentioned that your team is proud, but do you feel like that's a big, big, big goal to say, I'm going to make my family proud? I know the weight of that. So how do you feel about it now?
I feel good of where we've come, and I feel like there's a lot of work ahead of us still. So, so we're constantly pushing, and we have to.
To that end, I'm wondering what comes next. What's the future of Bellwether Coffee?
You know, we're excited to continue to support all different kinds of retailers. So, like, even like incumbents like Heirloom Coffee or Red Bay Coffee, who are huge roasteries, and they're looking for ways to supplement or augment their roasting with electric roasting. Like, we're really excited and proud to have them as partners in using Bellwethers, all the way to Muji, who's creates this incredible retail experience in Japan, to independents, to bakeries, like to folks who are just starting off and they want to start off with roasting coffee, which difficultly, like before, it was like actually really difficult for them to entertain that. We're really excited about that. The expansion for Bellwether internationally is a really big thing this year. So right now we're in United States, Canada, the UK, entering Europe now, Japan, and other parts of Asia as well. So that's the future state for Bellwether.
What did I miss today? Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't, or anything that you wanted to get out there about you or about the company or coffee generally?
I'm excited for the future of coffee. I know there's times where things could look bleak, but I'm excited at the reception that Bellwether has received over its latest roaster. I feel like there's this movement towards access of sustainable options for retailers, for cafes. So that's been invigorating for us. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other things. I
What are you doing when you're not drinking, thinking, working on coffee? How's that?
outdoors, like I can't get enough of outdoors. Whether it's mountain biking, surfing, spending time hiking in the forest with my family and friends.
It sounds like a pretty good life. Let's say you're headed out to go hiking or camping or whatever it might be,
Mhm.
but you need a cup of coffee. You stop somewhere along the road. What are you going to order?
One of the great things about like visiting cafes is for me anyways is asking what that barista recommends or what they're known for, because that I get to try the experience that they're really looking to to offer. And I have my go-to's personally, but like when you're out and about, it's an opportunity to share in someone else's art form, right? So I really enjoy just experimenting when I'm out and about.
I don't think I've heard anyone phrase it that way, share in their art form. I really like that. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you taking some time to talk to me, share this stuff with me and our audience. Thank you for being on the show, and I'm excited to see one of these new Bellwethers in person, which I'm assuming I will soon at SEA's coming up.
yeah. Are you
If
going to be in
nothing else.
Chicago?
Oh, absolutely.
Great.
If I can take a trip and write it off, you bet I'm going.
Well, I look forward to seeing you there. We'll be there too.
But it's been a pleasure. Okay, some key takeaways from the podcast. Ricardo's parents have had an outsized influence on his journey building Bellwether. They emigrated young and became teachers in the California farming community where Ricardo grew up. They bridged the gap between the local farmers, many first-generation migrants, and the defining American culture they worked within. As an adult, Ricardo has found himself using that example to create connections between people and communities as the founder of Bellwether, where he has to lead as the CEO of a company, introducing new ideas and coffee roasting concepts to an already established industry. Forging a new path isn't without its challenges. Bellwether Coffee came about 10 years ago because Ricardo and his co-founder Matt Brown saw overlapping trajectories in the appreciation for the nuances of wine, but in the coffee world. They began looking at the industry with the question of what, if anything, is keeping retailers from creating really unique personal experiences, kind of like you might find at a winery. What they found was a need for cafe businesses to be more involved in sourcing and roasting coffee, which is no small feat. So they asked, how do we make that easier? That led them to question the sustainability of roasting, in particular the reliance on natural gas in the process. And then that led them to, you get the point. Bellwether became a company addressing the rabbit hole that is coffee. Of course, once you're in that rabbit hole, the challenges of the industry keep presenting themselves. But if Bellwether could figure out how to develop a more accessible roasting machine, could they also figure out how to uplift the sourcing side of the coffee for both retail roasters and farmers at origin? That question led to their multi-pronged roasting platform, which includes an e-commerce sourcing marketplace, their machines, which are electric and ventless, and the roast management software that offers potential roasters the tools to create repeatable roasting results, regardless of where they are in the world. Bellwether also exists because it offered Ricardo an opportunity to find purpose in his career. He had left the tech industry because he wasn't finding that in a way that made him feel fulfilled or that he felt would leave the world in a better place for his family. It's a relatable struggle. How do we marry our skills with personal fulfillment and leaving this place we call home better than we left it? I'm still figuring that answer out for myself. Ricardo found one avenue to pursue the goal with Bellwether. I'm not speaking for anyone else, and I'm not a therapist nor a life coach. But it seems that finding sustainable balance is a worthwhile pursuit that, no matter what you achieve, will always be out there just beyond our grasp. Seeing the journey as worthwhile is an intrinsic reward. If we're able to use our efforts to make a better tomorrow, we all win, ourselves included. That sounded pretty profound, so I better end these takeaways, which I will do by saying Bellwether and Ricardo are moving forward with a triple bottom line point of view. I nodded along when he used that term during the show, but I did look it up to be sure I understood it. According to Harvard Business School, quote, "The triple bottom line is a business concept that states firms should commit to measuring their social and environmental impact in addition to their financial performance, rather than solely focusing on generating profit, or the standard bottom line." And yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. I'll share more details on Bellwether's living income pricing structure that they've implemented across many of their supply chains, more images and details about the new 20-kilo electric and ventless countertop roaster, and all the links from today's episode of Coffee People in the newsletter, found at coffeepeoplepodcast.com. And of course, just the links in this episode's podcast show notes. You can also head directly to bellwethercoffee.com. That is our Coffee People conversation for today. Thank you for listening to the stories of Coffee People, for being inspired by their entrepreneurial efforts, their wins, their setbacks, and for supporting this podcast by listening to these shows and sharing them with your friends. If you enjoyed it, repost this show on social media, leave a comment, or give us 5 stars on that podcast app. It all helps, and you're amazing for doing so. If you want to help us create and produce more content like the Coffee People podcast, consider a paid subscription to the newsletter or buying us a cup of coffee. Links in the show notes. Helping us bring this episode to you was our presenting sponsor, Roastar Coffee Packaging, found at roastar.com. We're also supported by some of the best, our coffee industry partners, including legacy partners, Zoombar Coffee and Tea, Steady State Roasting, Mostra Coffee Company, Coffee Cycle Roasting, Maria Coffee, and Cape Horn Green Coffee Importers. A special shout out to Crossings Coffee and Hisea Coffee Source, who enable our Coffee Smarter efforts, which you can find at coffeesmarterpodcast.com. And finally, thank you to our full city partners, Cozy Canine Coffee, Ignite Coffee Company, Ascend Coffee Roasters, Ascento Coffee Roasters, Civets Roasting Machines. I'm actually wearing my Civets baseball cap right now. San Franciscan Roasters, Me and My Uncle Coffee, and Craft 42 Coffee Roasters. That's it for today. Stay tuned for a bunch of content coming out from our trip to SCA. This show, the Coffee People Podcast, is part of the Roast West Coast Coffee Network. This episode has been written, produced, and recorded by me, Ryan Woldt. I hope this podcast has found you happy, healthy, and with at least a swig of coffee left in your mug, enabling you to make it through the day. Always tip your baristas, and be sure to drink good coffee. If you are in the early stages of your coffee journey, we want to support you. Check out the Coffee Smarter Education podcasts. Coffee Smarter is designed to enable coffee drinkers to brew a better cup of coffee at home. And Coffee Smarter Pro covers industry-specific topics for baristas, roasters, shop owners, and aspiring coffee professionals. You'll find both shows on your favorite podcast platforms or on our website at coffeesmarterpodcast.com. I've got a train here. Sorry, distracting.
Okay, I can do everything.
Yeah, good. I'll try to mute it. It's the beauty of the only downside to working from home.
Well, to that point, when you come hopefully visit us, where you have a train track right behind our building.
Yeah, I heard it earlier.
Yeah.
So, I can relate to that.
Yeah,
I'm pro train, but not when I'm working.